It is a new day, and we have another new frontier model release. Today, it is Deepseek version 3. According to Deepseek, V3 achieves performance comparable to leading proprietary models like GPT-4o and Claude 3.5 Sonnet in many benchmarks, while offering the best price-performance ratio in the market. When benchmarked against open source and proprietary models, they claim it achieved the highest score in 3 of the 6 major LLM benchmarks, with particularly strong performance on the Math 500 benchmark and programming tests, beating the top contender Claude 3.5 Sonnet in 3 of the 6 tests. While version 3.0 is too new to be on the leaderboard, you can see that Deepseek holds 2 of the top 10 positions on the Aider coding leaderboards. And version 3 claims to offer significant performance improvements. Well, today I'm going to be putting it to the test up against some of the top frontier models to see exactly how it stacks up. Today I'll be kicking off a brand new project I'm calling Contextly, which is described as a repository for storing and retrieving prompts, context, and commands in order to accelerate, streamline, and improve the outcome of AI development workflows. The model that performs the best will be the model that I use to build out the rest of the project, which I will be doing over the next few videos on my channel. Today I'll be comparing 4 different models, all offered through OpenRouter. Listed from the least to the most expensive, I'll be testing Google Gemini 2.0 Flash, which is currently offered for free. Next, we have Qwen 2.5 Coder 32B Instruct, which is offered at 7 cents per million input tokens and 16 cents per million output tokens. Then we have the new kid on the block, Deepseek version 3, offered at 14 cents per million input tokens and 28 cents per million output tokens. And finally, we have the reigning champion and by far the most expensive in the group, Anthropic Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which is offered at $3 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens. My AI partner in the project is going to be Aider, which is a fantastic open source project that has a great agentic developer workflow and also gives us the flexibility to configure different models to suit different purposes. For components, I'll be using CSS0, which offers a lot of components specifically built for Rails and also a Tailwind-like utility-first CSS library. I've created a new Rails 8 project using import maps and SQLite, and now I'm going to go ahead and create a new branch for each of the models. Here you can see the command that I'm going to use to start Aider. I'm going to pass it the options you see here, starting with Architect, which means it's going to start in the Architect mode, followed by Yes Always, which means it's not going to prompt me every time it wants to make a change to a file. It's going to go ahead and apply those changes and commit them to the repo. Next is the load option, which allows it to load a file that can run commands, and we'll take a look at that again in a minute. Next is our 3 models, first starting with our architect model, followed by our editor model, and finally our weak model. In all cases, I'm going to be using the Gemini 2.0 Flash model for the weak model, not because it's weak, it's actually very powerful, but because it's free. So here you see the contents of our .aider file, which I pass with the load option when I start Aider. The Aider file basically has 4 different commands in it. The first one is to set cursor rules into the context as a read-only file. Following that, I have a web scrape. So Aider's going to go scrape the Rails 8 authentication guide. I found that the models have not been trained on Rails 8 authentication and tend to generate code for devise. This should help with that. Next, I scrape the CSS0 utility CSS file. Again, the models are not trained on CSS0, so they tend to generate Tailwind CSS, and this is going to, again, help with that. Finally, I run the map command, which allows Aider to map all of the files in the repository so it has a better understanding of their purpose. It is important when working with these models not to add more to the context than you need, so therefore I only put things in the Aider file that are going to be useful in every prompt that I run. For the prompts I'm going to be running in today's comparison, I want to add some additional files to the context. So on the read-only side here, you can see I add some files for the CSS0 components that I'll be using, including the layout, the sheet, and dialog stimulus controller. I'll also need to add our application.html.erb file and our routes file, but I'm going to go ahead and allow Aider to modify those 2 files. And finally, I want to add the CSS0 sidebar layout documentation that's on their lookbook to give Aider an idea of how to generate that code. For today's comparison, I'm going to be running two separate prompts. The first prompt is a pretty easy prompt. I'm going to be asking the model to generate a home controller and a simple index view page. The second prompt is a bit more complex. I'm going to ask the model to generate our layout. I'm going to be asking for a sidebar layout, including some example links. I'm going to want it to use CSS0 and a collapsible sheet for the sidebar. I want the sidebar to be hidden on mobile unless they click on a hamburger menu in the header, which will expose that. I'm looking for a responsive design and also a minimal and clean design. Because it's the new kid on the block and I'm pretty excited to see what it can do, I'm going to go ahead and get started with Deepseek. As you can see, I'm starting Aider with Deepseek as the architect and the editor model, and Gemini 2.0 Flash is the weak model. And you can see here it's adding all of the items from our Aider file into the context. Now I'm going to go ahead and fire off our first prompt, which is going to create the home controller, our index view, and make the modifications to the routes file. Looking at the Git log, I can see that it made the changes and committed them. Now we'll go ahead and start the Rails server, and then we can go on over to the browser and see what we have. And it looks like the root route is pointed to the index action on the home controller, and everything is rendering correctly, so it looks good so far. Now we'll go ahead and paste in our second prompt and see how well it does with that one. Total execution time for that prompt was 1 minute 26 seconds, and our total cost so far is 2 cents. Looking at the Git logs, it looks like it made a change to exclude JavaScript files from the Rubocop inspection, and it also made the change to add our sidebar capability. Now we can jump on over to the browser and see what we have. It looks like we might have a spot for the sidebar, but it doesn't have any example links on the sidebar. We can take a look and see if we have a JavaScript error, and it looks like we do. We're getting a 404 because it's not able to find the stimulus controller. Collapsing it down to a mobile size, it looks like the hamburger menu is showing up, but of course the stimulus controller isn't working, so we'll have to fix that first. This isn't the first time that I've seen this problem with stimulus controllers. I think it's because the models are trained on an older version of stimulus, and they're trying to import each controller individually into the index.js file. We now have the ability to dynamically import all of the controllers with a single line that you see on line 7 here. So all I really need to do is remove a couple of lines from here, and we should be back in business. After going back and checking this out in the browser, I discovered another problem that I've also seen before with stimulus controllers, where elements having data targets on them were not enclosed within the declaration of the controller. And so I had to create a param element for that and make sure that everything was enclosed within it. After 4 prompts at a cost of 3 cents, this is what we have so far. And I would say it looks pretty good. On a laptop, we can see our sidebar is always there. We have a login link that is not hooked up yet. We have some example links in the sidebar, and when I collapse this down to mobile size and click on the hamburger menu, our sidebar opens up, and the X icon closes that back up again. So far, this is looking really good, and we are going to move on to the next model. The next model I'm going to be testing with is Google Gemini 2.0. And let me tell you something about this model. It is very fast. As you can see, this first prompt took it just under 12 seconds. It also passed the home index route challenge with ease. And now I'll paste in the second prompt, and let's see how it does. Gemini ended up having the same problems with stimulus controllers that Deepseek had, but after 4 prompts, this is what the end result looks like. And once again, this is functionally complete in both mobile view and in desktop view, so it did a great job. The next model up was Qwen 2.5 Coder, which I've used this model in the past. You may have seen my video, and it actually did a pretty good job. It did require a lot more prompts than Sonnet at the time, but this time around, it actually didn't do very well. It generated a lot of code that just simply didn't work, and I ended up just throwing it out and starting over and ending up with the same results. So in the interest of time, I eliminated it from this competition, but I do hope that I have a chance to go use it again and see if I can have better results. The final model in this comparison is the model that I've used the most, had the most success with, and spent the most money on, quite frankly, and that is Claude Sonnet 3.5. So we're going to get going with that. I'll throw our first prompt at it, and we'll see how it does. Opening the browser, and it looks like Claude Sonnet also succeeded with our first task. Looks good. All right, let's go ahead and throw our second prompt at it, and we'll see what we have. 2 minutes, 11 seconds, and 46 cents later, and it looks like it's done. Looks like Claude is showing off here, but let's see if it works. The hamburger icon shouldn't be showing up unless you're on mobile, but other than that, everything seems to work with just that first prompt. Adding a CSS0 media query class to the button seemed to solve that problem. Well, the results are in, and I'm going to take a minute and go over what I liked and didn't like about each of the models and how it performed in our tests. I'm going to start at the bottom with Qwen 2.5 Coder. Like I said before, I've used this model before and I've had some success with it. What I like about it is it's an open source model, so it's very affordable. You can actually download this and host this locally if you have a computer that can handle it. If you want the privacy of being able to host your own model, or if the demands that your project has don't require one of the more expensive frontier models, then I think Qwen 2.5 Coder is an excellent choice. Just because it's punching above its weight in this comparison, it is no slouch. In fourth place, I'm putting Google's Gemini. One of the things I liked about Gemini is it is fast. It was by far the fastest of the models, finishing up the first task in 12 seconds and the second task in only 26 seconds. If it was very difficult for me to pick a winner between Deepseek and Gemini, they both performed very well and both took 2 prompts and about the exact same amount of time to get to the end result. In the end, I think Deepseek generated a slightly better looking UI, and I like the fact that it's an open source project. Gemini is experimental, and while now it's free, I'm not sure how long it's going to stay that way, but I don't think you can go wrong with either of these 2 models. In second place is, you guessed it, the new kid on the block, Deepseek version 3. It was the second to the most performant in our comparison, finishing the first task in 33 seconds and the second task in 1 minute and 26 seconds. While it took an extra 2 prompts to finish the work, the end result looks really good with a nice clean looking user interface. And while it isn't free, the price is pretty negligible, costing under a nickel to get us this far on the project. And in the number 1 spot is, of course, Claude Sonnet 3.5. It continues to be the top model for Ruby on Rails development, at least in my opinion. It finished these tasks with 2 prompts and a very minor CSS change. And in the end, it produced the most professional looking and nicest looking user interface of all of the models. It was the slowest of the 3 successful models, requiring 32 seconds for the first tasks and 2 minutes and 11 seconds for the second task. It was by far the most expensive of the models, requiring 46 cents to finish these 2 tasks. I plan to finish this project in an upcoming video or 2. If you want to follow along and you haven't already, please subscribe below. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.